Welcome to Watch World with Faye, a new podcast in the watch and lifestyle space. I'm your host, Faye Mark. I've been in the industry for over 20 years and I've been lucky enough to work with the people behind the brands, from some incredible independents and micro brands to the Goliaths. One thing that I've noticed as a common theme is every brand has its own unique story. Join me in meeting with these people as we bring these stories to life. Welcome to Watch World with Faye. This is episode 3 and I'm delighted to be meeting with Mark Tolson again after we spent Saturday at the British Watchmakers show. Mark, thanks so much for joining me again. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. Thank you very much indeed.
Excellent. I really enjoyed Saturday. First and foremost, I actually got to see some watches and it's been such a long time and there was such a vast array within in a very unique setting. Of the British Watchmakers Day. So what I'd like to do is go over with you, just get your thoughts on the day, what the day was about, who it was important to, how it differs from other watch fairs, and just your initial thoughts and observations. And we could talk about some of the brands and if you had any favourite pieces. So why don't we start with what the day was about?
Okay, well, it is what it says on the tin, to be honest with you, the British Watchmakers Day. So it was the second one. There was one in 2024. So the one that was held a couple of days back was in the same venue, the Linley Hall in central London. There were 40 brands presented there. I think each of those brands, or 25 of those brands, had special edition watches as a draw for the people to come to the event. And I think the maximum capacity of the building was 1,300 people, and it was sold out instantly. And I think if I was going to give them advice, if I was going to give them any advice, I would get a bigger venue next year, because it was absolutely packed. I walked past the entrance about 8:30 before meeting you, and there was a long queue round the block, and that was really gratifying. That was really actually gratifying to see, and everybody looked keen and enthused. And I hadn't been enthused for quite a long time about anything, but I was really excited to go in. So it was great, and it's a celebration of British watchmaking, and that's. If you're a bit of a nerd or an anorak, you might say, well, a lot of these brands are using Swiss movements or Japanese movements. But what we're talking about here is ideas and innovation and parts which are made in the UK, but there's a lot of assembly going on. And if you were starting a watch brand, it's a heavy investment. So a lot of these guys are starting watch brands from new and only been going a couple of years, and so they're growing, and that's really it. So don't get hung up on the movements aren't British. You know, there's very few people making British watch movements.
So first observation, we're going to need a bigger boat for yes, next year.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we are seeing a resurgence of British watchmakers, and I think it's sort of a subculture within the watch industry that is clearly growing. And to your point, for there to be a queue around the block before the doors opened, and then they did it in two phases. They had a morning session and an afternoon session, and as we said, they sold out immediately. So I think that really speaks to the fact there is a demand and an interest in it. One observation from me, and I'm just going to have to put it out there, was 80% male clients. But perhaps so there was a lot of tall watches there, so perhaps that's kind of what the demographic was. I'm always quite interested about the demographics of an event such as that. But I suppose the other element is it was my first show that wasn't about trade, so I didn't really know what to expect. My experiences has always been novelties and new product. So what the interest and what the hook was for clients to come in and the general public to buy tickets, come and see these brands. I was quite intrigued how that was going to be managed. But I think where you've just said at least half of I think there were 43 brands showcasing, at least half of them had limited editions or special editions specifically for the day, really enhanced that demand for people to go in. And there were some really wonderful pieces that have been focused on British watchmaking. And the cues, and I'm going to have to start with the gimlet that Studio Underdog partnered with Fears. That one, they did 200 and they sold out, but they'd been really clever in terms of their marketing. I'd seen some of their socials in the sort of the run up to before. It was a great collaboration. Studio Underdog do partner with people anyway. But they were giving out sort of tokens in those, and if you got the token, you could buy the watch. And I heard people going, "Have you still got some available? Have you still got some available?" But it was a beautifully executed watch, and there's still a lot on it on social media. But sadly, you can no longer buy one because they sold out. So congratulations to Studio Underdog and Fears. I must say, actually, Fears, I found they are the most dapper looking team anytime I see them, and their stand was immaculate, and they're all very well dressed. I mean, it's their I think their strapline is elegantly understated or something along those lines, and it was very much the case of the gentlemen there that will work for the brand. Who do you think it's important to, the day itself? More clients or the brands, or is it in equal measures?
I think it's in equal measures, Faye. And coming back to your point about the demographics of people, you're right. It was mostly men, but there was a spread of ages. I mean, there were young lads, and there were people there who were even older than I am. I mean, I remember looking at one chap, and he was really quite ancient. So it's that community feel, that sort of I think that coming together of a watch brand and the clients. And you mentioned about trade fairs versus this direct brand to customer, as opposed to what we're more used to being business to business, which is what we're used to at Watches and Wonders. And I think the closest vibe I got to it was the wind up fairs in New York. It really is. And I'm not being disparaging. If you take the idea, it's like a jumble sale. People have got their table and they've got their brand, and there's an influx of people around them, all looking at the watches, all interested. And the ability of the customer who's seen the watch on the internet to talk to the bloke who's made it, designed it, or whatever it is. I mean, that is really a great thing. And I know we used to say, you never get a chance to chat to Abraham Louis Breguet or Antoine Lecoultre or whatever, but you can go and speak to Ian Elliott at Elliott Brown Watches, or Mike France at Christopher Ward. You can actually talk to the people, and I think that's a draw. I think that's a draw for many people, and along with, as you said, the hook being the limited editions that were 25 or so limited editions from various brands, which I think were a big pull. So I'd say it's for the clients, and I'd say it's for the brands, because most of these brands are not distributed in retail outlets. They're internet only. And so if you were thinking of buying a particular watch, okay, I mean, everybody's pretty flexible. You can order it, and if you don't like it, you can send it back. But actually, if you can go see the guy, stand in front of him, look at the different dial colours that you might have been considering, put it on your wrist and think, oh yeah, it's actually the right size for me. That's a great thing.
The point on community, I also felt there was a big camaraderie amongst the brands themselves. There was quite a lot of conversations, and they were going, "Oh, my friend over there." It's like they've sort of all cut their teeth together. A lot of these people, and they're really supportive of each other's brands, which you don't see in the trade fairs. There's a very different. Do I want to use the word snobbery? Yeah, I think so, a little bit. It's who's doing, when we're in Switzerland, who's doing what and what's been done really well. Whereas the guys here were all really supportive of each other, and actually they were very helpful to everybody. Monroe Adventure, they helped a damsel in distress. I had a tech issue with my microphones, and they didn't know who I was. It had no relevance. All they knew that I just happened to be standing, talking to them about their brand and a bit of a fluster. And they're like, "No problem, take ours." And it was really lovely that I was able to continue the day. That it didn't matter if I was a client or there as part of sort of just observing or press. And I got that real sense of community and camaraderie from the brands. And I think it was Ian from Elliott Brown, he'd said to us, he'd applauded how the day had been put together. Not just specifically, he said last year they do a lot of these these fairs that are D2C, and by the end of the first day, they just gave them a massive round of applause because it was so well done and they'd enjoyed it so much. And I think that's got to be really relevant as well, because the better they're done and the better they're delivered, the more people are wanting to get involved. And that the wind-up fair that we were in 2023, I think it was, that was my first experience of that type of fair, and that's what I was both surprised, and you're right, it's not polished. That's the difference between the trade fairs that are incredibly beautiful, sexy. There's free champagne, there's wonderful food. The appointments are, I'd like to say that they're sort of operate on time, but we all know they don't. But this is completely, it's frenetic, there's energy, there's enthusiasm, and people genuinely want to be there. So I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it for the complete opposite reasons that the trade fairs, why I enjoy those. And just people were smiling, and those enthusiasts that you're talking about, the tech geeks, and I've always said that watch enthusiasts know much more than the people in the industry, because people in the industry are quite siloed on either their own brand or the brands that sit around them in terms of what they consider to be competition and those that were in their similar price points. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. And if ever I was questioning sort of what we're doing now, Saturday really cemented it for me. It was lovely. And there was some much bigger brands as well that are within British watchmaking. So Bremont were there, as you said, Christopher Ward. So it's not just the new and the sort of the entry price point. I think prices started from about £500, maybe a little bit less, and then obviously they went up. There was a watch there at £250,000.
Rogers, I mean, that's elite level crap.
Yeah, but they're all under the same roof and all celebrating the same, the British watchmaking. And as I said, I felt like I think it's as part of the subculture that's growing massively, and it's entitled to grow into that space. It was really credible. I found a lot of the brands design-led and affordable, which was really nice, because if you are into watches and interested in horology, some of them were credible timepieces that were just not the prices of some of the Swiss-made brands that we're slightly more familiar with. And I wonder, it's quite interesting to see that the response. We had a coffee with Mike France from Christopher Ward, and a client in like sort of came in and tapped him on the shoulder and was just like, I just really want to thank you. He was wearing one of his watches, and it was wonderful to see how the brands responded to the clients directly. It's like you're saying, because you're not going to sit down with Mr. Abraham himself and have a coffee with him, but also how excited the clients were. And I wonder if that raises the enthusiasm and the meaning of it, because I keep coming back to the storytelling piece that, after I met with William Wood a few weeks ago. They were there as well, of course, another great British brand. But it's that whole, the clients get to meet the people behind the brands. It's not just another faceless watch in a watch stand. So we've talked a little bit how it differs from the trade fairs, that it's not a trade fair. What do you think the energy is going to be like looking forward? We've got Watches and Wonders next month. How do you think that's going to differ for us?
Well, I mean, it's. I would say it's going to be very different. I mean, by nature, as we've sort of only more or less explained, that a trade fair is different from a direct to client affair. I mean, Watches and Wonders is very posh. It's very sophisticated. It's very cool. It's very, very, very calm. But I mean, if you remember what it was like in 2024. It was a little bit of a subdued affair because of the general sort of downturn in luxury watches, and I would imagine the 2025 iteration may feel a little bit the same. I mean, there's been the overall export figures from Switzerland for last year were down versus 2023, and then the latest export figures for January 25, the value of exports were up by 4%. But the unit count was down by 4%, and I think the value increase is mostly due to price inflation. Price of precious metal has gone up, therefore the export price has gone up. The units are down, so it will be interesting to see how Switzerland reacts and how the world reacts. But I mean, there's no denying Watches and Wonders is the thing for watchers, and it'll be an interesting barometer of how the rest of 2025 is going to go. Whether the brands there are going to go big on new launches, or whether they're going to be a little bit cautious based on maybe the market not being as buoyant as they would have hoped. So my feeling is it could be a little bit subdued again. But as I say, contrast that with a completely different vibe at the British Watchmakers Fair. It's a completely different animal to Watches and Wonders. But it was a joyous occasion, and even I was happy, which doesn't happen that often these days. But I really, really enjoyed it. It was as you sort of indicated, kind of rekindled your enthusiasm for watches, and it did me too.
Oh, good. And we were able to kick off our TikTok account and start asking the question, what your desert island wrists? I was really pleased with how that was received, actually, because you had some of these brands and some important people in the industry referencing other brands. So I'm quite excited to see how that goes. And we even managed to get you on camera, Mark, and telling us what your desert island wrists are. And I'll probably ask you again on many occasions. So just have that at the back of your mind. Did you notice any trends at the fair?
Not specifically. I don't believe so. I mean, there's one of, I don't know, inventiveness and sort of pioneering nature, but you would expect that if you're setting up a watch brand from your bedroom, you've got to be hyped up and keen and enthusiastic. You've got to be approachable. There was a sense of fun and playfulness from the brands, and we'll probably come on to a couple of examples that later. But there were lots of tool watches which I like, from the likes of Bremont, Elliott Brown, Vertex, and Alkin. There was some collaborations with or artistic, quite highly artistic pieces. I mean, you mentioned the collaboration Fears and Studio Underdog with the gimlet. That was great. That was such a cool looking watch. But Mr. Jones and the Chaosify watch, if I'm saying that correct, I mean that was an in-your-face kind of artistic-looking watch. Schofield with their Ben Guffey caseback. Isotope have got some interesting-looking watches, and then you got classic stuff from the likes of Farah and Prestex, Duckworth Prestex. I mean, Neil Duckworth was there, and he's a bit of a legend in the UK. His watches are brilliant. So I think there was something for everybody. I wouldn't say, everything's about blue dials or everything's about green dials. There was just a variety of stuff. I think there was somebody for everything, and also, price points of this, as you mentioned earlier, from, I don't know, sub 500 quid up to anything you can imagine, really. So no specific trend, but just the feeling of innovation and go-getting, and I think that was quite infectious.
Yeah, I think that I suppose it's a difficult question in terms of trends, because it's not a new product fair. So they're bringing either models that they had created specifically for the event in the limited editions to enhance and have a larger engagement, or their current collections. So it was largely one model that might have been produced, as opposed to when you'll see Tag Heuer next month and there'll be 30 new pieces or new collections or enhancements within. So the trend thing isn't, it's not forward looking in that fair. So I suppose it was an odd one, but I agree with the innovation. For me, I thoroughly enjoyed the creativity from some of these brands and how they absolutely own it. Some of the marketing pieces were really fun. So Christopher Ward's, their edition for this week was Mission to Maidenhead. It was a moon phase. Great watch. But what I loved was their marketing piece behind it. It was dot 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 mega, and it was just brilliant. It was sort of a play on the sort of the moon watch, clearly. And you called them detrashed or detrash. I thought it was a great brand. I didn't know anything about them. They're it's massive on the recycling piece. 1% of all of their turnover, not their profit, is it goes back into charity. And their slogan is, you never actually own the planet, you only ever look after it for the next generation. I thought it was beautiful, it was fun, it was playful. Everybody knows where that's come from, and he's got the audacity, and it works well for his brand. There was no, it almost, regardless of who it's sort of a tongue-in-cheek reference to, it was brilliant. Especially as sustainability is so important at the moment, and we're seeing such a that conversation becoming really relevant to most of the brands. And the other one, which we've referenced them a couple of times, but I didn't know Elliot Brown. We're going to meet with them again later in the year. They're on a dockyard, right, I believe. But
yeah.
when they gave us their business cards, one of them was GCSE level 3 woodwork, and their head of marketing is head of winging it. And I just couldn't help but laugh and smile, because they clearly take what they do very seriously, because they're a credible brand. And the more I understood it, the more they spoke to me about it, I was really impressed. And they don't pretend to be anything else. It's just like, it's a tool watch. All the experiments that I'm going to let them do the narrative on it, because it's really interesting. And I know you're much closer with them, or you're much more au fait with them. But it was great. You're never going to get some of these Swiss brands. The only one that can be slightly disruptive in that arena is Uly's Nardin, where they've completely take ownership of the Be Freaky and the freak from their model, and they launched it, and then they've stepped into that, which has been great, because a lot of that side of the industry is quite sophisticated. So I was really impressed with the creativity and the enthusiasm that some of these brands are taking on and claiming it, and just owning it, and stepping into it, because it's just nice to smile, and if they're putting, because it doesn't mean they're less serious about what they do. They just realize that they're not curing anything that begins with a C, and they're loving. You get a sense of joy from it, and that's what I really enjoyed from that side of it. And we know there's still a lot of expense that goes behind their marketing on all of these. So the fact that they've got the audacity just to either tongue-in-cheek reference other huge brands, but they're still like, yeah, let's go with it. So for me, I wanted to applaud that. Was there any?
No, I was going to sort of reference. I mean, the irreverence, not irrelevance, but the irreverence of Christopher Ward with the Omega and the sort of mission to Maidenhead watch. I mean, that's they are a serious brand. Let's not forget they won a GPHG award in 2023, which is incredible for the Bel Canto. So I think that's the only British brand that's ever won a GPHG award. And that moon phase watch was, it's the, I think it's a JJ04 moon phase movement. It's got the limited edition they did for the day was an aventurine dial. And with a little astronaut with a British flag, on the moon kind of thing. And that moon phase movement, it's a continuous moon phase. So the moon sweeps rather than does a daily jump, which is what most moon phases do. I mean, and I think it's I think there's 1 day variance in 128 years. So there's a technicality about that watch that's a nice counterpoint to the playfulness of the whole marketing behind it. And I would also say that on the detrash you mentioned about, the skit on Patek's advertising, again, the watch that I most liked from them, it was a 200 meters water resistant steel integrated sports watch with a Seiko NH35 movement. I think it was like 400 quid or something, 375. And it was an absolute bargain, and it's kind of made with 80% recycled steel and nylon, reclaimed nylon from the sea on the strap. So that's kind of a thing. That's kind of a thing that your sustainable watch brands do, but they they were fully into that, and it was a great looking watch. And the guy, I think, started the company. I think his name is Guy. Actually, his name is Guy Balski. He started that a couple of years ago, and he's actually also based in Dorset as well. So you've got the, I don't know, Dorset seems to be the Silicon Valley of independent watchmakers at the moment, with Elliot Brown and Detrash. But yeah, it's that irreverence and the seriousness. I think it's an interesting thing.
Well, I think they can do the irreverence because they've got the credibility in the watches and in their own product. I don't think you start with a gimmick and then launch a watch to back it up. It's the other way around. And that's why I applaud it, because they've got the confidence. And to your point with Christopher Ward and the movement and how, and the its accuracy, we were privy to a beautiful watch that's being launched on the 24th. It's still under embargo, so I'm really excited to see when they launch that and how that goes. In fact, it's on my wish list of pieces. But yeah, I certainly wasn't taking away any of the importance, but it's the fact that they can do it. And I suppose because it's their own companies and their own designs and their own teams, they have that much ability to be as agile as they want, and and the playfulness that we're not always used to. We often see at the fair someone bring out something with a pink dial, and it might be quite whimsical for the brand, and we're like, oh, how wonderful, you've done a pink dial. And then you've got some of these other brands just completely it's just owning their own space and in their own design concept, and not pretending to be something else. So what surprised me the most and what impressed me the most. Certainly didn't take away from the importance or the credibility of it. Did you have any favorite watches?
Gosh, I mean, there could be quite a few. I mean, I liked, I hope I'm going to say this right, Anoma, which was an interesting shape. So it was triangular shape, but a soft triangle, like a pebble that had been worn by the rivers or the sea. I think they called it sculptural watchmaking, and that was beautiful. It was a terrific watch. Unfortunately, I can't remember the name of the guy who designed it, but it was based on furniture designs from a lady called Charlotte Perriand, and also some sculptures from another guy, Bran Kersey. I don't know. It's not really my wheelhouse, that sort of stuff. But he'd taken inspiration from the shapes that they'd created and made a watch which was quite beautiful. And I mean, everybody's got their preferences, but I kind of like organic shapes like that. It's a real counterpoint to some of the brutalist designs that, well, like the Audemars Piguet Remaster 02 that came out, which is very, very angular. And I'm slightly wondering if we haven't had that many brutalist designs over recent years. I wonder if that might be a theme coming up at Watches and Wonders. But anyway, that shape was really lovely and a little bit more conventional. I think the Bremont Terra Nova bronze on a bronze case and bracelet, that was cool, with a nice sort of caramelly dial. And again, I mean, it was equally impressive. Obviously, the CEO there is Davide Serrato, who is a bit of an industry legend. He designed the Black Bay from Tudor, did work for Panerai and Mont Blanc, and you could go and have a chat to him. I mean, he was quite in demand, but he was there, and he's a big deal, that fellow, So it's quite interesting to be able to talk to him as well. So yeah, I mean, there were a couple. I don't know, Bowcroft from Cambridge. That was really cool. Again. Another kind of watch, a steel integrated kind of sports watch called the Element, about £649, but had a really nice weight to it. I think it was automatic. And they'd done a limited edition as well for the fair called, I think, Penfold, and with some Bristolian artist called Tim Gresham, who's also known as Penfold, and it was a white dial with kind of some blocks of colour on it. I think it was described as a fusion of pop art and modernism, but that was really good. And again, it shows there's a connectivity between watch brands trying to do things and connecting with artists, etc. And that was great as well. I like their style.
Where you reference the Animo model, they've just launched that at Time and Tide as well. I think they had an event there recently that seemed to be really successful. But I wonder if you said this when we met last time about case shapes, that you might think that might be a trends that we'll see from the fairs. So that will be interesting, particularly as we're seeing it from many different angles. It was interesting. It was your call out. So yeah, I Duckworth pressed X, the N2, which he did specifically for the event. Cushion shaped watch, Union Jack colours, so white style, blue Roman numerals, and the 12 was in the red. So it was still really subtle. So it didn't look gimmicky, but it was a really nice watch. I wasn't sure if the crown sat a little bit proud. I'd probably like to see it again. It was just I only got a chance to chat to Neil briefly and try on the watch very quickly. Just would have liked to take a bit of time, but I really like that. And the other one that wasn't specific for the day, we've already referenced Fears, but I really liked his Brunswick. It's gold plate with a champagne dial. Yeah. That was a limited edition, but I believe it was the last one they had at the show. I thought that was beautiful. Again, cushion shape, so I'm probably leaning into that a little bit at the minute. You know, I've always liked a vintage watch, so it kind of speaks to that aesthetic. I had a little look on their website this morning. It's not there, so I wonder if the last one has been sold. Did you buy it for me? Maybe. On the quiet?
No.
No. But your comment on the artwork as well. I think D-Trash did that. D-Trash did that as well with their they had it looked like Space Invaders, and they also did the California dial. I think that one you were quite taken with that, weren't you?
In fact, I'd forgotten to mention, but since you mentioned it, the California dials. So for those who don't know, that's Roman numerals in the top half of the dial and Arabic numerals in the bottom half of the dial, and it's kind of a Rolex did it on the bubble back models in the 1940s, I think it was, and it's to give legibility and clarity on the dial, I think, with the loom. And I don't know, it seemed to be popular in California, or there was some California dial restorer who kind of did a lot of work on those sort of things. So the California dial was in evidence with D-Trash, but also Neil Duckworth did have got one as well as a limited edition, I think of I can't remember, was it 25 or so at £675 with a California dial on. So maybe the California dial is having a resurgence, which would be interesting. It's quite a cool looking thing.
Yeah, well, we'll watch this space, and then we'll do a review when we're back from Switzerland. Mark, I thoroughly enjoyed Saturday, and I really enjoyed the British Watchmakers Day for all the reasons we've cited. Thank you so much for joining me again and giving me your feedback and your thoughts. Next time I see you, we'll probably be in Switzerland. Slightly different vibe, but I have no doubt we will have just as much fun.
Yep, thank you, Faye. Good to see you. Thanks for this, and hopefully it enthuses more people about the exciting world of watches and horology. And I think the collectors thing is really interesting, and I think it's worth noting that enjoying watches doesn't mean you've got to spend thousands of pounds. There's a lot out there that's below £1,000. I know £1,000 is still quite a lot of money, but there's a vibrancy about what's going on in the British watch market, which is really, really encouraging, and I think people should embrace it. So I was really happy with Saturday.
Thanks so much. Take care and see you soon.